Greetings, Ohio Valley. This is Dan Lima with OSU Extension from Belmont County.
And this is Karen Cox from WVU Extension in Ohio County. Thanks for tuning in to Extension Calling, your source for research-based information for the farm, garden, and home. Please take some time and check out our evaluation. bit.ly/extension calling evaluation. Extension calling and evaluation all need to be capitalized. You can call Karen at 304-234-3673. That's 304-234-3673. Or you can reach Dan at 740-695-1455. That's 740-695-1455. Thank you so much for your time.
Hello, Karen.
Hey, Dan. Another week.
Another week and much warmer than before. Much muddier than before.
Yeah.
I was out on the farm visit this week and got very, very muddy, very quickly.
Oh, I'm sure. It's losing your boot weather out there.
That's pretty much what happened. I was not well prepared. It was kind of an impromptu thing and went out there just kind of, it was beef cattle. Of course, that's probably what made it muddier than it should have been. That's the one thing you can count on cows making mud.
It's so funny. It's like you think about the vehicle of a typical extension agent, and it is typically full of all sorts of things. I know my husband is always frustrated with how much stuff I keep in my vehicle, and I always have my muck boots and my orange vest for visibility. I've got measuring equipment and sampling equipment, and it's all in the vehicle. Because like you said, a lot of times it's an impromptu visit. We just like, okay, yeah, I got a free hour and a half on my schedule. I can come out right now, or I'm not going to be able to come out till 3 weeks from now. And that's just the life of an extension agent. And so for all of you extension agent significant others out there, we appreciate your understanding.
Well, I do my best to keep everything at my office and always try to come here before I go somewhere else to kind of avoid that. Plus, you might switch vehicles, and I don't know. To me, it just helps to keep things grouped together so I don't forget anything specific. But it never fails, right? Like, you go do a forage analysis, and of course, those kits only have one bag and you need at least 3 because most people don't just want to test like one lot. You got to test several, and it's good because you got to compare, right? We always talk about when you're doing a forage analysis, and I know we're getting way off topic from what we want to talk about, but you want information that you can compare one from the other so that you can best utilize everything you have. And I don't know why those kits only come with one. I'm not going to name the kit that I use, but I'm wondering if other kits are the same way. It's like, we'll give you a form that you can put about 15 samples on, but we're giving you one bag. I don't know. It's just a Ziploc bag. I mean, it's nothing it's terribly expensive, but I guess it does keep costs down in some way.
Yeah, it's frustrating, though. I can understand that. But yeah, I mean, you talk about the things that you need, and you don't know what you need until you actually need it. And that's kind of the frustrating part. And so one of the things that we're going to talk about today is when you're looking at your agricultural business, then you want you to start thinking about what you have, what equipment do you have, what shape is it in, what manpower do you have, how much of it do you have. But we're also going to want to talk about what of those things are your strengths and what would you consider weaknesses. So we're going to talk a little bit about conducting a SWOT analysis, that's SWOT, on your agricultural business.
Yeah, and like you were saying, SWOT analysis with an O. It's typically used for assessing, and I think a good example as far as like using it to begin with is you doing an individual assessment. It's easier to talk about yourself. I know people might not agree with me, but as far as assessing what you're good and not good at, rather than trying to do your family farm, for instance, because then you are assessing not only yourself, but your family members, the operation, and you start to group things. The more complex it is, I think the harder it is to get a good like SWOT analysis. So I would recommend doing a SWOT analysis for every single person that's part of that farm. And then once you have that down, go ahead and start piecing together like a SWOT analysis of the family farm in general. Because what you're going to find in a family farm, this is one thing that we talked about before, was it works best when everyone works as a unit. People are going to be doing different things. One person might be doing marketing. One person might be growing things. One person might be the website, which I know falls under marketing, but sometimes it's a different set of skills that you need. And when you're looking at the family farm SWOT analysis, it might look different from the individual one. But it's always good, I think, to start with individuals and then kind of go into the broader family farm SWOT analysis. So let's get into the meat here. SWOT with an O stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And under strengths, you want to talk about what makes you competitive. What do you do better than others? What do you see as your strengths? I know the last one's kind of intuitive, but it's just another way to phrase it, just to kind of get a complete picture of the strengths. But really, don't forget to put in there what makes you competitive, because that's what's going to give you the edge. That's what's going to make your business stand out and for you to be successful. Because remember, it's more than just hard work. It's offering something that others can't. Under weaknesses, what could you improve? What should you avoid altogether? And what does your competition do better? Again, kind of falling back to that competition aspect, because that's what's going to make or break you in the long run. And I was going to say, especially in a wholesale market, you really have to have that edge in a wholesale market setting.
When you're talking about strengths and weaknesses, those are things that come from the internal workings of your farm business. So yourself, your family, but also the things that are in control of the business. So you can think about the amount of debt your business has, what machinery and labor availability, like we mentioned earlier, how big is your farm? And then, when Dan was talking about thinking about what you do better than anyone else, think about not just how you act, but how others perceive you. And so do others see you as someone they want to work for? Do they see you as someone who's reliable? Those types of things, your reputation can be a strength as well. And then for weaknesses, you want to think about how much have you worked on the business plan? Have you thought everything through? Because not knowing where you're going can actually be a pretty significant weakness as you are building your farm business.
That's right. And I remember one of the things that you were talking about was, remember when I was talking about going to the farmer's market, what a positive experience was versus a negative experience, and how much more that positive experience is shared compared to the negative experience. And, I think the example I was giving was just somebody coming in and, enjoying like the atmosphere, enjoying the product, obviously. But I was mainly focusing on my personal experience that had nothing to do with the product I was selling. So if you are selling from the farm, from the farmer's market, appealing to that experience is something that you should put as one of your strengths. Being able to teach someone how to do something properly, I think that in itself is something that really will make a business stand out. Is not only am I giving you an agricultural product, but I'm also going to tell you how to take care of it because I want you to be successful. It just adds more value to what you're getting, because you're also gaining not just an experience, but experience from the farmer growing whatever he's producing and giving it to you and telling you how to take care of it. But maybe that's more of a nursery setting, but it could be also.
Well, it could be how to store your produce, right? Take this home, wash it right before you eat it, store it at this temperature and things like that. So all of those can be things you can do to help your customers get that more improved experience. And I think it's really important to recognize that not all of your customers' experience is going to be within your control. So did they get in a traffic jam or a traffic accident on the way to the market or the way to purchase your product? Was there a problem with your cell phone company and they couldn't get through to you to change their pickup time? Were there problems that you couldn't control? Even though those are outside of your control, it's important to be aware of them and to recognize that you are still responsible for your customer's experience. Now, you can't really make the whole world a better place because you threw in an extra half dozen eggs or something. But when I worked at Disney, that was one of the big things that they pushed is it takes 3 goods to outweigh 1 bad. And so even if there was a problem that was not in the control of the theme park, right? Your flight got delayed or they lost your luggage or you had to wait 2 hours to get a taxi or, whatever. There was always a push from inside where, okay, we want to try to make up that bad experience with a good experience so that we can make sure that you have this really great family vacation. And so the same goes for any type of business. If there is a negative experience that is surrounding your sale, then that negative may overweigh the power of the positives. And so it's always important to have those conversations with your customers to say, hey, what's going on today? I mean, and sometimes even just listening to someone say, oh, I had a really bad day. This happened, that happened, the other thing happened. And just listening to them can be that positive experience, to commiserate with them and be like, wow, that really sucks. And sometimes that's all people need is a place to vent and let it out. And that can be that positive experience to help outweigh that negative experience that went with it. But when you're looking at those external experiences, those external things that you have no control over, those things fall under your opportunities and your threats. So those are the O and the T of the SWOT analysis.
Yes, thank you, Karen. Yeah, I never actually got that far because I was kind of focusing on positives.
Well, there can be positive external things too, like all of a sudden it's trendy to eat kale, right? And so you grow kale in the wintertime because it's the only thing that's going to grow. And so now you can actually sell that kale for a reasonable profit. And so those trends can be a positive thing, even though it's outside of your control because you are not controlling what's trendy. Unless you have a really amazing Instagram account. But not everything that is outside your control is a bad thing.
Yeah, and you're right. Opportunities are obviously a positive way to talk about problems or not necessarily problems. Well, threats is one that makes you want to focus on things that you need to hone in on, like other competitors, and maybe some obstacles that you face. And some of those obstacles you can get around, some of the things you can improve. But some of that stuff has to do with land suitability, let's say. Depending on what that land suitability is, that obstacle could be something you could get over, or it could be something that might want to make you consider another direction or another twist on it. Obviously, one of the things that we can talk about as far as opportunities or threats that you can face as far as land suitability goes, we always talk about soils, right? And there are certain production practices, there are certain crops we can grow where amending the soil works great. And there are certain things that maybe it doesn't work so great. And one of the examples that we've given day in and day out of the show is growing vegetables versus a tree fruit crop or a Christmas tree farm where the roots go pretty deep. They have to grow for several years. And if the pH isn't suited for that crop, that kind of obstacle might not be cost productive to get over. So there might be a shift in the way you do things, or you might possibly have to acquire more land, maybe rent land somewhere else. That would be another way to kind of get over that obstacle if that's something that you really want to do. But land suitability coming from a farm SWOT analysis perspective is something that you really have to look into. Facilities, we always talk about how to keep things as far as curing processes for produce, being able to store things in a clean way for a customer, for a client. Maybe you need to build a new facility. Maybe you have a facility, and does it suit your needs?
Well, before we go too far down that road, I do want to go back to land suitability really quick and just talk about the fact that, this is a process you're going to want to do over and over and over again because things can change. Even things like land suitability can change. So, for instance, you are a livestock farmer, you grow hogs, and you are, a really good local pork producer, but your neighbor passed away and their kids didn't want to farm, so they sold the farm to a development company. And this is a very common thing that happens. So what was a hay field next to your swine farm is now a subdivision. And you have people who are moving into this subdivision who are not familiar with the noises and smells and hours that come with agricultural production. And so your land suitability has shifted because now you have a set of new neighbors that you have to balance your work with. Now, you were there first, and most states are going to support the right to farm and your agricultural production because it is essential for life. But that doesn't mean you're not going to have harassment from neighbors who don't like the smell of pig manure or things like that. And so it's important to recognize that these changes or these threats or opportunities can change. Now, the opportunity that comes with this new set of neighbors is a larger market to which you can sell your product, right? And so developing those relationships and saying, hey, we're going to have a pork roast for all our new neighbors in this new neighborhood. Come on over, learn what we do on the farm, and get engaged with them. And that's an opportunity where all of a sudden, maybe they just decide, hey, they will only buy their pork from their neighbor. And you are now going from your wholesale production to have a little bit of direct sale on the side. And so, again, do these SWOT analyses at least once a year and look at how things change over the years. And your interests and your time are going to change. Your physical abilities change over time. And so as you age and you don't have that back strength to be able to manhandle so much stuff, it's important to recognize that in yourself. And maybe you're going to have to hire some staff next year. These SWOT analyses are something that can help not only build your new business, but help keep your existing business healthy.
Yeah, and that's a really great point. The opportunities that you can't get with neighbors. And I was even thinking, if you have, let's say you're selling eggs off the farm, having a neighbor that can just come over and buy your eggs, having that repeated customer, especially if they like your product. But then they start buying for other people as well. They buy it for their families. They're going to go visit their cousin. And they, say, hey, this is eggs from the neighboring farm. They're really good. So that repeating customer, that positive experience, and then you talk about it. And that is a great way to maintain relations and build that clientele base that you need to be successful, that customer base. And something that when you're talking about smells and things, and, that can be a nuisance to certain neighbors, but you have to be careful too if you're thinking about starting off and you're going to purchase a piece of property to do something that you have in mind. One thing that you need to make sure that you're not getting into are city ordinances. And we touched on this last time, but this is a different perspective now. Instead of you having the land that you're using and having neighbors moving in around you, if you are buying land to start a small farm, you need to make sure that the zoning laws and city ordinances if you are close to city in the city. And that stuff can really impact agriculture production, even though there are many laws that protect agriculture, like Karen was saying. So depending on your approach, I've always said when purchasing land for farm use, it's better to start locally and then go from there. Look at the county laws, look at the city laws, the township laws, ordinances, go to the state level, and then go to the federal level. Because if you work the other way, you might run into an unforeseen problem because things are going to get more strict as they get smaller. So always work from smallest to largest and make sure you ask those critical questions before making a big purchase like that. If you're not sure, definitely get the answer and make sure that you know before you make a big purchase like that.
Oh, yeah, that is absolutely critical. And other things you should consider when you are looking at purchasing a farmland is, what are the roads like? Is there an alternate water source? So if there's a drought, you can still have access to enough water for irrigation or for livestock. Think about the slope of the hillside. Is it too steep to actually plant a crop on? Or maybe is it too steep to graze? Because there are some hillsides that are. You want to look at the accessibility as far as, can a large livestock trailer get to you? Can you have bulk grain deliveries for your animals delivered? Is there a bridge that maybe has a weight limit on it that would impact that? So you want to think about all of those things when you are looking to purchase a property. And of course, look at what, like Dan was saying, look at the neighborhood, look at what is going on around you, and of course, what the regulations are. Now, you can even do a SWOT analysis on a property purchase. What are its strengths? What are its weaknesses? What are its opportunities? And what are its threats? And, write all that stuff down. And sometimes it's sort of like a pro-con analysis. It gives you an idea to say, okay, well, there's too many negatives for this property, or the strength of the positives outweighs the negatives. So that gives you something that is more concrete than just a gut feeling or a hunch or I'm so excited and I really want it. It gives you some really good, honest feedback as far as what it's going to be to put this together. What is the investment going to need to be in order to get it up and running? Is there a house that needs repaired on the property before you can live in it? What is the expense going to be for that? And so there's a lot of little things that go into these big decisions, and writing them down is really an important step to help you just be able to see everything. It's hard to hold everything in your head, and sometimes things get pushed out by the excitement of the moment, and you'll make a decision based on how excited you are, instead of making a decision based on how good this property is going to be for building a homestead or a farm to support your family in the future.
And one of the things that I want to emphasize, especially if you're buying a neighbor's land to expand your farm, it's one thing. But if you are starting fresh, the way we kind of started talking about is, making that purchase in the right manner so that the land is suitable for whatever you want to do. But take somebody with you. Like Karen was saying, you might get excited. You might have the blinders on. Bring your family. Bring one of us if possible, like the extension office. I know when I was looking at purchasing a piece of property that I got, I talked to my colleagues and asked them questions. I had them look at buildings for me, and they were very helpful. And I mean, I would be happy to kind of walk some property, as long as I got the proper permissions with a potential landowner and discuss these things. Let's look at the slopes. Let's look at how much sunshine that your crops need for whatever it is you're doing. Is it a south facing slope? Are you on the bottom ground? Are you at the trough of a valley? And if that's the case, you got to think about frost and things like that. And you might not even consider that. There might be good water. It might be real fertile soil. But, if the frost is going to be a factor, putting fruit trees down there would not work out. It might be a different story if we're talking about livestock. that might be a really good area to have like some kind of handling facility to be able to put a feed bunk in so that there's some protection from the elements and you can control erosion really good too. There's going to be different suitability for different things. I know water is a big thing. Are you on city water or county water? Do you have a natural spring? And that natural spring, how good is it? That might be something that you might have to get some more information on, because you probably don't want to be monitoring a spring for 12 months out of the year and kind of seeing how it does before you buy it. But you have to understand that if you do have city or county water, you'll have water. You will have potable water at that. So you might not be concerned with washing produce or having fresh, good water for livestock. Obviously, you're paying for it, but it will be there. Having a natural spring, it's a little bit more of a gamble, but different things make sense at different times. And sometimes I'm very happy that I have plenty of county water available to me. And some things, when I pay that bill, I'm like, I wish I had a natural spring. But, I might be very happy to pay for it when I'm the one with the good water and no one else is.
Yeah, and this all comes back in when you're talking food safety and animal production and making sure that you're going to be sustainable for the long term. And that's, of course, the goal is to, as you're building your business, you want it to be sustainable. We want to help you make it sustainable. And so reach out to your local extension agent and ask for help, ask for guidance, especially as you're just getting ideas down on paper. That's the best time to ask questions. And sometimes you can get a little overloaded. And, I've had people that have put the farm business on the back burner, come back next year, ask more questions, put it on the back burner, come back the next year, ask more questions. But then once they get started, they have everything worked out and it runs so much more smoothly and they're so much more successful. So take your time, get your plan down, and ask for help. Thanks for listening to Extension Calling. This show is a collaboration between OSU Belmont County Extension Educator Dan Lima and WVU Ohio County Extension Agent Karen Cox. If you'd like a transcript of this show, contact us at the office. Also, let us know if you enjoy the show by ranking us on your podcast app.